that's interesting. Jeez. Hi everybody, welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. My name is Maria, and I am here to help you make more quilts in less time with less stress. Hopefully, this is not your first time here and that you've been kind of following along with what we're doing, but if it is, you are still more than welcome. We're happy to have you here. I would like to thank those of you who are subscribed though, because today we hit a milestone. It's not one of the great big ones. It's not the 1,000,000 subscribers or something like that, but there's 50 of you now. It's a nice round number, and I really appreciate those of you who have joined on. So if this is your first time, I am a professional organizer by trade, so I usually start with a tip. I'm not going to this week. It has just been one of these things where I couldn't remember if what I was going to tell you I've told you before, and didn't have a chance to go back and look. So today we're going to be tip-free, wild and fancy-free at the same time. But normally I do. Then I talk about quilts that we've been talking about together, and then we will work on the blocks of the month that we're doing for this year's annual quilt. Now, you are welcome to go to StashBlasterQuilts.com. You will be able to see the past entries for the 2023 mystery quilt and the 2024 quilt that we're doing right now. It's going to be a simple 9-block quilt. So January was the fabric requirements. We assembled the first pieces of this block that we're doing for February, called Sarah's Choice, and we'll finish it today. And then we'll try to do the same thing each month, where we'll do some assembly the first and we'll finish it by the end of the second one. However, programming note, next time, the first Wednesday of March, I'm going to be in London. It's 5 hours ahead. And although I love you all dearly, I'm not getting up that early, or sorry, I'm not staying up that late. It would be midnight, and I just can't do that with having to be up at 8 o'clock the next morning. So Scott, my husband, is going to post the block for next month. It's a very basic block, so you've probably already done a bunch of them, and even if you haven't, it's not hard. However, on the third Wednesday of the month, our usual time, I will be on here and I will go through everything with you. Okay? So next month is a little bit different, than I am going to miss one of our meetings. If it was here in the US and I could just be off a couple hours, I would do it, but I just can't do it that late at night and speak anything close to English. So Not that English isn't my native language. It is. It's just I get kind of gobbledygooky when I'm too tired. So that's where we are at this point. Since our last get together, I told you that we had the Springfield Quilters United Quilt Camp, and I thought you might be interested in seeing some of the projects that I worked on. I am not completely done with one of them. It's going to be a carry-around project, but I thought I would show you. Thought you might be interested. So the first thing, and there are more projects that were taught that I just haven't finished. But the first one that I did was this little bag here with a little box bottom for jewelry. It's quilted. Let me see if I can, hopefully you can see there. I just did some straight line quilting, but on my little travel machine, my foot is not centered. So there's a little bit thicker and then a little bit thinner. So it makes for an interesting look if you pay attention to it, but otherwise it just looks like stripes. So it's just a little jewelry bag. I am not all that comfortable with zippers, so it was nice to get some practice. And then on the inside, we have these little pouches to put the jewelry in. Some people subdivided them, but I left both of mine big like this because I don't tend to wear small pieces of jewelry, so I'll be putting necklaces in these. But then it all just tucks down in like this. It's fully lined. Oh, sorry, it's fully lined. Well, you can't get enough light in there. Well, there you go. So it was a lot of fun to do. I also did a key holder. It's the Magic key holder, and it looks like this. This is also quilted. Oh, good, you can see that. These are hearts that I did because of the hearts that are on the binding, on the edges and in the middle. And so when you attach your keys here, then you just take your bead and you pull it up and your keys disappear. And you can have it on your wrist, or you can hang it near your door or something, and it's less obvious that it's got like car keys in it. So I thought this was kind of fun to do. I think I might assemble it a little bit differently than I did for this, and I would change some of its dimensions. For example, instead of using the 1/4 inch binding here on both halves, I would probably beef that up to make this thicker this way, because right now it's like this. I would make it thicker. As well, I already made it a little bit longer, but I'd also make it a little bit wider. So there'd be quite a bit I would change on this. In my case, what I'll probably do is use this for client keys, so that when I have keys to people's houses to go in and work when they're not there, then it's in a completely separate thing. Right now they're attached to my keyring. So it'd be kind of nice to have a separate holder for those. And then the last thing, I was supposed to make a mat that went under my sewing machine that then came down and had pockets in the front as an organizer. But I changed it, not completely, but close to completely. This is actually the scrap material from what I was going to make, but it was just about the right size. So this is what it looks like. Here we go. Oh, here we go. And this is designed for me to sit this way and to have the pocket. This is the one that's supposed to be here, and I added this one, but to have the pockets off the side. So I could put this on the arm of my chair upstairs if I wanted it for hand quilting, or I can put it under my machine and have it hang off the end if I'm like at quilt camp or something like that, and put the things in these pockets, and they won't be flopping up against me as I'm going in and out, potentially dropping some of the bigger stuff. So these pockets I may subdivide. I haven't decided that yet. And as you can see from the clips, I've put the binding on halfway, but I'm going to use it as a hand sewing project to put it on the rest of the way. And then I added ties at the end. So if I'm going to take this to something like quilt camp, I can take it, I can roll it up like this. Now, you get the idea. I can roll it up and then tie it shut so that everything stays inside. So that was the third project. Other than that, we spent a lot of time chatting, and I spent a bunch of time working on making the white arcs for my traditional flower garden. And I did get a couple of emails asking me about that since the last meeting. So I figured I would, hold on a second, I accidentally clicked something I didn't intend to. There we go. Since the last meeting. So I thought I'd show you how it goes together. Okay? So what I did was I took all the various shades of white and I tried to make sure that they were sprinkled amongst each other. One thing you don't want to do, let me just sit down and talk about this, is you don't want to have just a few pieces that are a different material. Because then it looks like I ran out and I had to do something, so I just stuck in another fabric. There's over 40 different white fabrics here. So if there's more of one than another, no one will know. But it does make it so that it looks more even in your quilt. In this particular case, I specifically tried to not have too many arcs that were duplicated, so that when I put them on the wall, I'm not going to see, the same thing everywhere. Another advantage is by mixing them up, you don't have this arc all be the same and then this arc be a different material. You could do it that way, but for me, I didn't want any attention brought to the arcs. They're the path that is the way through the flower garden. I want the flowers to be mostly what's looked at, so that's why I did it the way I did it. So let me go to the wide view, and then I'll show you how this is going to work. Okay, so for every flower, there's going to be one arc. So let me come over here. My iron's hot, so I'm trying to make sure I don't put my plastic box in front of it. So here's a flower. And then here's, hold on, when I did it, I did it this way, so that's why it's in my head. Okay, so here's the first arc. Okay? Now people said to me, but that's only a quarter of the flower. That's true, but when I put this flower here, and I put the next arc, it's going to line up like that. Now, by the way, this looks blue because that's the color of the cardboard stock piece that's underneath there. These are all white on white fabrics. And so then the next row, it'll fit in like this, and its little 5-piece arc is going to go here. See? So what I'm going to be able to do is put the arc on each one, and then I can assemble these into rows or into groupings, however I feel like doing it. Here we go. I'm just going to do this one more because that's what I had in my hand. Like so. Okay? Now, obviously you see the white tape. Okay, these have not been sewn together yet. These have just been taped together. I'm taking this entire box with me to London. Oops, here it is. Okay. I've got an 11-hour flight and 11 and a half hours coming back the other way, plus my time at night when I'm in London, plus the time during the conference when I'm just listening to do some sewing. So I don't know how much I'm going to get done, but I want to make sure I have enough. So by taping these together, I don't have to worry about pins. I love using my binder clips, as you know if you've been here before, to keep my pieces together. But in this particular case, this will take up less space. So I'm going to have this plus a pencil box of these ready to go. The pencil box will have my scissors, thimble, threads, etc. in it, plus some of these arcs. There's only room for one set of arcs in the pencil box, and that's what I'll be working from for the most part on the plane, etc., rather than getting out the big box. But then I'll have this to refill with. So when I come back, hopefully I'll have a bunch of these already sewn up and ready to assemble onto the flowers at a later date. This is going to be a very long-term project. If this is your first visit here, this is something I'm going to be working on for well over a year, because the goal is to do about one flower or one arc per day, but there are 289 flowers, so there are just as many arcs, and then there will be the top edge and one side that has to be done in addition to those arcs. So it's going to take quite a while, quite a bit of sewing. Given my husband's health right now, I have more time for handwork while I wait for him at doctor's appointments and things like that. But I don't want to have to count on that. I will be doing a bunch of traveling later in the year to teach at conferences and things like that. So that will also make a difference. So that's how those arcs are going to work. I'm going to put it back up on wide so you can see it again. And so all of the white paths will be automatically done, and it makes it a lot easier than trying to, work around one and then you've got the next round out, the next round out. It can get cumbersome in your lab. So this way it'll be able to be manufactured into rows, and then rows put together, 2 at a time, and then those 2 rows to the next set of 2 rows. At that point, I'll probably have started already removing some of the papers to give me more flexibility in the middle, but it'll be much easier to work on than if you're trying to work on these big giant chunks. Okay? So that's what's going on with that. All right, back to the up close here. Okay, so we are working on Sarah's Choice. The instructions are up in the annual quilts, just so you know, with a picture of what the block is supposed to look like at the end. So feel free to go and look at that at any point. Again, StashBlasterQuilts.com. Oh, you are welcome to leave comments in the chat or to make comments later. You're also welcome to email me at this email address, and I do respond to those. When there's a few more zeros on the number of subscribers, I may not be able to respond to them all, but for right now, I do have the time. If you have any organizing questions, whether it's about sewing room or other types of spaces in the house, I got a question about a garage the other day, I'm happy to answer those as well. Sometimes I'll answer them here, and sometimes I'll answer them privately, depending on whether I think it's of general interest. But if you have a question that's incredibly specific and potentially identifying, then I won't answer that. I'll answer that privately for you. Okay? So, let's talk Sarah's Choice block. Let me switch to camera 3. Okay, now this block, I'm going to lay this out here. I'm going to put all my little goodies over here behind. And those can go on the floor. Okay. It's a pretty simple block. In the instructions, I do have you... Alright, I don't have my glasses on, that's why I can't see. There we go. I do have you assemble it differently than I would normally. Oh, by the way, these are the half square triangles that are left over by doing the rectangle method that we talked about last time. You wind up with 4 of each, in this case the light and the medium yellows in the half square triangles. I do not believe, but I could be mistaken, I do not believe that we're going to be using these later. But hang on to them until we're sure, because there's one place I'm thinking about changing the pattern where this might come in handy as scrap pieces. But I save these. I don't trim them. The reason being is half square triangles are infinitely cut downable. Okay, I know that's not a word, but as an example, if you look at this here, right, this is a little bit bigger. This is a 2 3/4 inch. So you could trim this right to 2.5 right now, but what if later you need a 2 inch? So then you trim it to 2 inches, or 1.5 would be right here. So these can be cut down regardless of what size you want, as long as it's smaller, of course. So I don't take the time to trim them out now because I don't know what size I'm going to need later. Okay, and I'll take the time then. I have a whole drawer of them, and other things. Well, here, let me see if I can angle this up so you can see it. So this drawer unit right here, I know it's a little messy right now, but this is square to square blocks. Now these you can't cut down, so these are whatever size they are. These are 9 patches, flying geese, half square triangles, 4 patches, and 2 patches. So they're all ready to go whenever I want. And then, so I'll be putting these into that drawer after this class. Okay. So normally, when I am pressing flying geese and solid blocks, I normally press to the solid block. I found that for me, and if that's how you want to do it, feel free, but I found that for me, it was better to make sure that the central blocks was pressed out, which means everything needs to go towards the geese. So I hope that that makes sense, but let me lay this out so you can see what the block is going to look like, in case you don't remember or you didn't see. Now, I did make a mistake when we were doing this last time. I started sewing those flying geese, and I didn't pay attention to which side the medium yellow was on and the light yellow. So I reversed it on the first one. Now, I did tell you to make sure that you do all of the flying geese the same, so I did them all the same, so they were reversed. And what that meant was, when we look here at the block, I had basically diamond shapes of the same fabric. So what I did is I took the 4-patch apart, rotated the blocks, and sewed them back together so that I'm getting the medium, light, again. So this is the way it's supposed to be. I know it's hard to see in this light. I'm going to try to bring this down. Maybe it'll be a little easier to tell the fabrics apart. Okay. I didn't want a lot of variation in mine, so my medium isn't that dark, but in order to get the Sarah's Choice block, I did need to take the center block apart. If I had not already cut the flying geese apart, I might have considered taking them apart, but that's a lot more work. The center was a lot easier. It was only a long seam and 2 shorter seams, as opposed to I would have had to have taken 8 different seams apart, and it wasn't worth it to me. Okay? So this is what our block is going to look like. So what we're going to do is we're first going to sew our corner blocks on, just like that, and we're going to sew the flying geese in the middle. That'll make our 3 rows, and then, oh, you can't. We're not close enough anymore. And then we'll sew the 3 rows together. Okay? So let's start with the top and bottom. The nice thing about this is that it's very simple sewing. I prefer to sew, in this instance, with the pieced stuff on top, because my square on the bottom is very stable. I don't have to worry that I'm going to be having it caught by the machine or having it twisted during sewing. Now normally I would be using leaders and enders. I'm not in this case because this is yellow thread, and since all my leaders and enders that I have prepared right now I need white thread for, because they're like half square triangles or something that has one white and one another color. I'm just going to go ahead, I'm dropping my needle, I'm pulling down, here we go. I put down the needle, I pull the thread to the side gently, and then I will start stitching. Now, if you're not comfortable sewing without pinning, you certainly could pin this. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just going to sew these together. I've got 2 of them, so one will be kind of the leader and the ender for the other. Oh, I think I lost a square. Well, that's kind of how the week is gone. So, oh, there it is. It's on my foot, down under my sewing machine. Who knew? Okay, so I've got it here. Now I'll do this one. Now, does it matter which direction I put it through? Not really. I will usually try to do it so that the flap that I'm approaching is facing the machine. So by sewing it this way, I can make sure that this gets tucked under and doesn't get twisted underneath. However, you're going to do the other side anyway, so it doesn't really matter which order you do them in. It's completely up to you. But our squares are face to face. Oh, I was asked at Quilt Camp about my favorite tools. I love long tweezers. Now, this one I got as a door prize. It came with a pair of scissors that I didn't care for because they were very square edge, so when you would cut with them they were uncomfortable. But I love that these are nice and long, and I can pinch them from way back here and still have the end close. These are done the reverse, so you pinch to open, and then you let go on your thread or whatever, and then you can twist, you can pull, you can do whatever you want. So I use both of these quite a bit. To me, it doesn't matter which one I'm grabbing, I'm just grabbing one, but when I am pulling up thread from the bottom or something, it can be hard to get a hold of, especially when you've got a bigger foot, like a walking foot. So for me, it's been a lot easier to have the tweezers handy to do that with. Now, just like with any leader and ender, I'm going to leave this one under my foot. I'm going to trim this first thread. You can always trim threads later, but I kind of like to do it as I go. So the first square is on. Now I'm going to put on the second square. Now in this case, obviously the flap is facing me, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, now the other half. Now the nice thing about this, my blue being a batik, it means that I never have to worry about right sides or wrong sides. But you're of course going to sew these together, right sides together. So if you have a print, you just need to remember that so that you don't wind up with an upside down piece. Not that I haven't had that happen to me a few million times. Okay. So now we have our first row, this would be the top, okay, and our third row. I'm going to leave this in as the ender for my center block. I won't be as lucky when it's time to do the other side. So this is the block, okay, how it goes together. I always double check this because it's very easy to confuse which side things are on or which way it's going. So yes, this is what I want. I will flip this over this way, and then I will line it up. Now, it's common for me, especially if I'm downstairs pinning in advance so I can just come up here and production sew. Let's say I was doing 50 of these for a quilt or something. I like to put a pin in the X on this side, which will be exactly in the point on this other side, and then line things up with my other piece to make sure everything's lined up okay. Okay, and this should be straight up and down, this pin, at which point I'll put a pin on both sides. This is still straight up and down, so I'm happy with that. Excuse me. I saw the nurse today. I had been, I had COVID the first week of January. And I've had this horrible cough ever since. And I just can't get rid of it. And she said, yep, that's the way it is this year. So it's like, great. Okay. Alright. So now that I have this pinned, when I stitch, I want that needle to go right in that X, and that's going to make my point line up right with the intersection I have here, because there's no nesting seams here. Okay? Oh, hey, Pat. Glad you're here. Alright. So let me do this side. You never sew over the pins. Right now my needle is right in that X right now. I know you can't see it, but it's there. Okay, I'm going to just take a couple stitches here, and then I'll pull that pin. Alright. Now that's the first of our central flying geese. Now unfortunately I don't have anything to use as a lead or ender at this point. So I'm going to have to pull this out, leave a little bit of a tail here, because that's what I'll hold to get started next time. Open this up, double check. Okay, it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty darn close. It's close enough. Now this one, I'm double checking that it's going the right way. It's not uncommon to flip these to where you sew the goose facing the opposite direction, and we don't want that, so then we double checked. Yep, that's right. Here we go. Alright, pin number 1 into the X, just under like that. Right there, you can see it's right there in the point. Then I'm going to put it, trying to get it where it's comfortable to work, and I sometimes forget that you can't see everything here. So, alright, this is right there where I want. It's in the intersection. Close enough. Alright, and now our stabilizing pins. Now see, that pin was a little tough to put in, so the next time when I'm doing this, and I'm not doing it for you, when I find that something is tough to put in, the first thing I will do is check it to make sure there's no rust. If there's no good reason for it, then it could just be that the pin has gotten dull, in which case out it goes. I keep my pins in sand so they stay much longer than your average. They'll stay sharp, but sooner or later they're all going to give up. So there's nothing worse than trying to force your fabric, force your pin through fabric when it's not interested in going. So, alright, so here's the other side of our central square. Okay, so as I'm coming up, I'm going to move this first pin. Alright, now it's on this side of the needle, so my needle won't hit it, but it is still holding a couple layers of the fabric together, so it makes it a little easier for me to hit that X. A stitch or two, and then finish the seam. Okay, my iron turned off, so I'm turning it back on by tipping it and putting it back. Okay, so now let's double check our design. Okay, let's go up so you can see the whole block. Alright, so now you can see kind of how it goes. I'm going to press towards the goose, like I said. So what that means is that this seam is going to face this way. This seam is going to face this way. So that when we go to put them together, they're going to nest right here. Now, when I've sewn these together, I'm going to press towards the geese. So this central block, all of its seams are going to head to the outside. Okay? If you want to do it the other way, you are welcome to. It would put all of these center seams into the middle. You're going to have bulk either way. So it's whichever one you prefer. In this particular case, when I've done similar blocks, I've preferred it the other way. Alright, so I'm going to take you over here. There we go. Now we've talked before about pressing versus ironing. We are going to be pressing these. So first we give it a little bit of warm feelings, warm vibes. That kind of loosens up the seam. Now, I'm going to be pressing towards the geese, so I am going to want to flip this over, but it doesn't matter so much for this part of it, which way it's facing. Now, whichever side you're pressing towards should be on top. So we're going to flip these over. Okay. Now here on our central block, we want to press towards the goose. So by having the goose on top, when we fold this back, you can see under here, this is where your seam line is. And here's the seam line, I'm sorry. And this shadow here is the side that the seam allowance has pressed to. So I'm just going to give this a quick little finger press here. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. My nails are wonderful for this. When I didn't have fingernails, I would use sometimes a spoon. I used to chew my nails when I was younger, so I kept them super short. And then I made the mistake of telling my husband that when I got stressed, that's what I did. And so he kept watching my hands to see how I was doing. And so I had to make sure I broke that habit, because it used to make him sad that I was unhappy. And he would put on the cutest little pouty face, but I really didn't need that. So, okay, so our center's pressed. Okay, so in this particular case, you're going to take one side at a time. So my goose here, I'm going to pull over this way so that it has that seam allowance behind it. And then from this side, I usually just tuck it under and then finger press it. If you flop it over and then you fold it back, you'll get the same results. Okay, so here's my two finger pressings towards the goose. And now press. And then we'll do the same with the other one. So again, if this was on like this, right, you would just fold it back because the goose is on top, and that's where I want that seam. So you could flip this over, fold it back towards the goose. I just wasn't in the mood to do it twice, but I realized I needed to show you what I meant, so there you go. Okay, now, it is just a quick little finger press. It's not perfect, just get it close. It just helps with the pressing to make sure that you don't wind up with a big bubble somewhere. Okay, that is that. Now we have, let's come back over here, our 3 rows. 1, 2, 3. And we'll sew those together. Now again, because of the intersections, I'm going to pin. I'm going to start with the middle. I'm going to do it exactly the same way as I did it before. Center X. And then right into the center of the seam. All right. Now here, these are going to nest together, so I'm just going to go ahead and nest them. And while you could put pins on both sides, I generally just put it on the leading edge to make sure that that's going to go down the way it's supposed to. Alright. I moved ahead. I should have done the ones on the stabilizing ones. I apologize. I'll do those now. Now, if I am not worried about it being precise, let's say I'm making a picnic blanket, right? I probably wouldn't even bother to pin. I would just line them up and nest things together as I went. But in this particular case, since it's a block that's being done where it's a block of the month over a bunch of time, it's just better for me to go ahead and pin it, make sure it's all done right the first time. You could sew the one side and then pin and sew the other side, but I'm just going to go ahead and pin both sides now because they're far enough apart. If they were close enough that the pins would interfere with each other, I wouldn't, but here it doesn't matter. I'm using a dry iron. I will use steam occasionally, but my preference is a dry iron and a water bottle, so that if I need it, I can just put the water where I want it, spray it on lightly, and then turn it into steam with the iron. But for this kind of work, I usually just press with a dry iron. Here we go. My hands are a little sore today, so it's making it a little bit harder to line stuff up. Yep. And for some reason, my deck here does not want to stay put. It's not quite this part of the table that recedes isn't quite deep enough for this deck, so it holds on just a little tiny bit on both sides. Now the far side here is up against the U part of the desk, so it's not going anywhere, but this front edge does like to flip and flop. Alright, let me go ahead and nest these. I am planning on going to a quilt shop or two in London while I'm there. I was watching a costume historian, and she was talking about how for the handwork that they do for historical costuming, that the best hand needles are made in Japan and in England. So I am going to go and check out their needles, because I'm not super happy with a lot of the needles we buy around here. A lot of times they're not finished properly, so they have rough edges and you wind up shredding your thread. And so I am going to go and check out the English-made needles in England. So hopefully I will have some to show you next time. But when I have taken a really good look at some of the needles that we get here, I've been unsurprised that I've had problems. So I will be happy to see if there is truly a big difference. And I will report back. Hopefully I'll also get some good pictures. Maybe I'll do a little PowerPoint of the shop, if there's anything that's truly unique there. Right, now once I get to this seam, since I didn't pin this end, I am going to make sure that everything's lined up for this last little bit of sewing, and then I will just finish the seam. I have never been to England before. My son went as a student ambassador when he was young, and when we asked him about the trip, he had nothing to tell us. The only thing we knew about the trip was information that other kids told their parents about fun stuff that they had done. So I am looking forward to seeing some of the things that he saw and didn't tell us about. Alright, last seam. Unfortunately, because of Scott's chemo, he's getting it tomorrow. He is not able to leave the country, so I will be making this trip solo. But I have a lovely woman that I mentor who lives in Romania, and so she and I are going to hang out. And while she's more into journaling than quilting, we'll at least be able to wander around the city together, so we're not going to be alone, you know. But she has, I believe, 3 kids, and they keep her busy. But she is the first professional organizer in Romania. So, although she has a lot to learn, she is on fire. I mean, she's on TV all the time. She does all kinds of cool stuff. So, in many ways, she's who I want to be, and I'm who she wants to be, which makes life kind of weird when we're sitting around just chatting. But it'll be fun to hang out and do some stuff together. Alright, so the block is sewn. Are we happy with how those geese lined up and our edges? Again, not 100% exactly perfect, but it's pretty close. Alright, a quick press. Again, I'm going to press towards the flying geese. Let me rotate you back around here so you can watch the action. Here we go. So the flying geese are on, the flying goose, excuse me, is on top. I'm going to warm this up. Now I actually do have water in this iron, so if you see it flopping around, don't be surprised. I was steaming some other clothes, and it was just easier to use this iron like a traditional steam iron at that point. So. Now we flip it around. We do the other side. Oh, I missed that thread. Let me grab that. Fold it back, give it a little bit of a finger press. Yep. And it probably looks like I'm scrabbling across the fabric when I do that, but I'm not. What I'm doing is I am coming across, I'm barely touching because I want to make sure that it's flat underneath, and then I'm setting it down. So I'm not doing this across the seam. Okay, so here we go. Back to the regular camera, and here is Sarah's choice. Oops, here we go. Okay, so this is block 1. If you go to StashBlasterQuilts.com and you go under Annual Quilts and you then go to 2024, the fabric requirements, which are rough requirements, if you want to do some of the alternate piecing or you want to do it as a scrappier quilt, you're going to need to adjust. So I would recommend getting extra. Then this is block 1. So if this is your first time, you're not far behind. I have had somebody tell me already that they're doing theirs in pink and green. Anything you want, go for it. Now what you could do with this if you wanted to was take a bunch of really lights of a color and mediums of that color. You could do different shades of the background. Let's say you chose blue or green or whatever, so that each one was a different material. I am planning on putting sashing in mine. So if you want different background colors, it will work. So I'm just letting you know that right up front. Excuse me. So have fun with it. Oh, excuse me. I ate just before I came upstairs. I apologize. What iron brand are you using? This, I believe, is a Sunbeam. Yes, it is. I don't know which model this is. Okay? I looked for the model before, and I couldn't find it. It's just a Steam Master iron. So it doesn't have a separate name. You know how sometimes models have a different name? I like this one simply because it's very lightweight, even when it's full of water, and it has the cord retractor. But I have so many irons in so many different conditions. I have my mom's old iron that we had when I took sewing in middle school. I think that was middle school that we did the home ec. And that's when I said I was never going to touch a sewing machine again. In that particular case, we had to pick something we wanted to make, and so I wanted to make a jumpsuit, you know, with a zipper up the front and a jacket and track pants, basically. And nobody warned me how much harder it is to work with knit, because it was a bright yellow knit thing. And by the time I forced my way through that, I said, I'm never sewing again, and I'm never sewing clothes. I'm never, 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 never. And now look at me. Every chance I get, I have a needle and thread in my hands. But I still don't make clothing. I am going to be attempting some clothing because I can't let that fear stop me. So I am going to start with a simple skirt, that kind of a thing. I don't know when. I don't know when. Right now, with life being as up in the air as it is, it's going to happen when it happens. Oh, other news. We tried to buy another Camry. The 3rd of January, I was in a 4-car crash. I was the second car. The car ahead of me had stopped. I stopped. A guy hit me. Then a guy hit him who hit me, and that ultimately pushed me into the car ahead of me. I did manage to stop in between, and I was very happy about that because there was a child in the back seat, in a car seat, in the car ahead of me, and he wasn't injured at all. He barely was bumped. There was a little crease mark in the bumper. That's the only damage that they took. My car was totaled. The car in between was totaled, and probably the truck was totaled. It was a pretty good high-speed crash. So it was a Camry, and I loved my Camry. And so we went to go and get another one, but Camry is doing a total remodel for 2025 in that they're not going to have gas cars anymore. And so they're redoing the Camry and everything. Although the Camry had a hybrid option, it's getting a revamp too. And so they're not making them. The dealer told me that they were going to be getting one. It wasn't going to start being made until the end of March. It was a color I did not want. It did not have the other things that I wanted. So we weren't sure when we were going to get it. Oh, and by the way, because they're so scarce, there was a $3,000 premium. And I said, that's nuts. So my big thing is safety. So we got online and found the Honda Accord, which also has really good safety ratings. And we went to the dealership, and 2 days ago, we walked in at 9:30 in the morning, left at 2:30, and had it delivered at 4. It was a very long day of car paperwork and things like that, so that part was annoying. But I now have a relatively bright blue Accord in my driveway, so that's pretty cool. It has all kinds of stuff that I really didn't care about. A moonroof. I've never had a moonroof. I don't need a moonroof. But I've been thinking that when it gets really hot, and for those of you who aren't here, I'm in Virginia, right near DC. So we do get all 4 seasons, but we trend towards the warmer side. So when it's hot, I'm thinking it'll be a lot easier to get the heat out of the car with the moonroof. So, that'll help. And so, okay, we'll try it. But like I said, it's not something I would have paid for, but it was there. There's a couple of other features that would have either cost me to put on the Camry, or I just wouldn't have bothered. But okay, that's fine. Overall, I've only driven it for a couple of days, but I'm happy with it so far. It's going to be our long distance car. So last year, I took several long trips. Drove to Boston twice. I flew to Boston once, drove there once, drove to Missouri, drove to Detroit, drove to Florida. So Scott's little Sonic is not going to cut it for long distances like that. That's the zipping around town, going to get groceries type of car. So we wanted to replace it with something that would be more comfortable. So we knew we were looking at something the size of a Camry or the Accord, or maybe sometime in the future even larger, but still a sedan. So the Accord and the Camry are fairly equivalent. So I'm quite happy with it at this point. I'm not sure how happy I'll be later when I find out all of its little quirks, but that's the case with any car. Luckily, I'm also not the type of person that freaks out at the first ding or dent. I know it's going to get them, and It's not going to send me into a tailspin, so that's good. So I am going to be spending some time this week reading the manual because I don't know how to do a lot of the things. Like, it has adaptive cruise control, and it has it doesn't have a button for the tripometer. You have to do that differently, so I have to learn how to set the tripometer for my work mileage and things like that. So there's a learning curve ahead of me, but that's okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. But it's going to take some time. Because of the trip and everything else, I'm not anticipating making much headway on my quilts, and that's okay. Like I said, the instructions for this block and the next block are done. Scott will be posting the one for block number 2 on our normal meeting day, which is the first Wednesday of the month. I told him he had to wait. He couldn't post them. He couldn't post it now. I'm going to make you wait for it. So you'll have that for the beginning of the March block. Again, it's really quite simple, and the instructions are there. If you have any questions, though, I will be assembling the trickier parts of that block, if not the whole block, at the third Wednesday of the month that we meet. So, first and third every month. These are the 2 simplest blocks in the entire quilt. Okay? They are going to get trickier. So, if you've got questions or problems, my goal is going to be to make sure that I'm going to be available for both, so I can walk you through them in case you get confused or you try it and it doesn't work, to try and make sure that my written instructions make sense and you can see what I did on the videos. One thing that I'm doing different than last year is that on each block, when you look at it in the annual quilt blocks on the website, it's going to tell you which day live stream video matched to that block. So this one shows the videos, and it has the last time we met date and today's date on it, so that you will know if you need to go back to the live streams to watch me do it, you'll know exactly where to go to find that information. So that was a suggestion from one of you. Thank you very much. Hopefully that will make this easier for you if you don't do this for a while. It's not uncommon with a block of the month or even the mystery quilt we did last year for people to not start it until it's 2/3 of the way through, even if they've been watching from the beginning. So this way, you know, the information will be easier to find. I've had people call me or email me and ask me, where was the video that went with that? And I have to go back and find it. So this way, it'll be right there from the very beginning. And we'll see kind of where we go from there. Okay. Sorry, I'm dry again from the coughing and from the talking. Thank you all again for coming. If this is your first time, please like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all of that kind of stuff. I do tend to start about 15 minutes in advance so that you have a chance to go and get something to drink and get settled. I know that it drives me insane when the bell goes off that a live stream I wanted to watch from the beginning is starting, and I'm on a different floor and I have to run upstairs to try to, and I've missed the first couple minutes. So I want to make sure you guys have that fair warning. I don't do a lot of edited content. If you look, there's only a few. It's almost all in the live streams. I am hoping sometime in the future to start making edited content, but for right now, this is what we can do. So this is what I can do. I hope you've enjoyed it. There's a lot of chit chat, but hopefully it's been fun. I will see you guys in a month. I will be back the third Wednesday of the month. This at the website. The block will be up the first Wednesday of the month. I hope you are all having a good season so far, that it's a healthy and happy spring for everyone. Just so you know, for those of you who have been curious, my husband did the first round of chemo quite well, and he tolerated it quite well. We're hoping it's going to be the same for at least the next 1 or 2. But we caught it early, so hopefully he'll only have somewhere in the 4 to 6 rounds and not have to go on to 8 at that point. So we are very positive here. They've punctured him full of holes with biopsies, but everything has come back negative so far. So we are quite pleased with his progress and how things are going. So all in all, things are okay at the Spitalnik house, and we will, as usual, make it through. That's what we do. That's what we do as quilters. That's what you do in life. So thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you next month. Bye-bye.